What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question comes from Michael Westfall and Tyler Shepard, who ask what happened to the Bad Batch during Order 66 and if they had inhibitor chips at all.
I would assume that they did have inhibitor chips. 'Cause it's still kind of up in the air whether or not they were made purposefully mutated or if they were accidents. If they were accidents, then yeah, I would assume they'd have inhibitor chips. If they were purposeful, I don't think you would make someone like Wrecker and be like, let's not make him part of Order 66. Like, of course you'd want him around.
Yeah, I agree. They probably have inhibitor chips, and I like to think that these were accidental, but just they got lucky kind of mutations. I don't know if they were on purpose or not, but...
They seem like, they were all good mutations. They're helpful. So in my mind, they were on purpose. But yeah, I can't recall them ever saying that they were purposefully modified. Did they participate in Order 66? I think that all depends on whether or not there were Jedi around. Like, the clone that abandoned, that deserted and went off to live on a farm with a Twi'lek, Cutler Quain, I don't think that he did anything for Order 66, because I doubt there was a Jedi around. I don't think he got up and left his farm to find the nearest Jedi and kill him or her. So I think it was more just a thing that would trigger if a Jedi were in the area.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't really know what's going on in a clone's head once Order 66 happens, except kill the Jedi.
They're just like, I feel angry for no reason.
Yeah.
So I just imagined that they were off on their own mission and it triggered and they were like, no Jedi around? Okay, we'll keep doing what we're doing. Or maybe there were Jedi around and that poor person.
Yeah, it's weird to think that if Order 66 happens and all the clones, no matter if they're around Jedi or not, if they just like become human killing zombies, that's pretty dark.
Yeah. I don't know.
Jesse wants to know if Anakin would have been willing to sacrifice his life to use Force Heal on Padme in Revenge of the Sith.
So let's pretend that he knew that was a power at all. I've talked about this before, but I think that the Force in general comes down to motivation and intent. And I see Force Heal as like a completely selfless thing. And when Ben healed Rey, I think he fully knew he was going to give all of his life to bring all of hers back. And in his mind, he's like, the galaxy needs Rey more than it needs me. So that's what was going on there. Anakin's motivations were purely selfish. I don't think he would have been able to pull it off because it wasn't about like the galaxy needs Padme or I just want Padme alive. It was more like, I need Padme because she is mine.
Yeah, and we see this throughout the Clone Wars series and the movies. He's pretty cocky, and he is just a selfish Jedi, even when it doesn't come to Padme.
And George Lucas himself has said that the lesson of Anakin, or one of them, is that, yeah, you can love people, but you can't own people. Loving them doesn't mean that they're yours, and that was one of Anakin's big downfalls.
Yeah. Pablo Alvarez asks what we think of the rumored video game Project Maverick.
So this popped up on like a UK PlayStation Network store page or something for a little bit, and that's all it took. People grabbed screenshots of it, and I don't know what to think, but I did see people talking about it, like people who are in the know on the video game business side of things, and they were like, yeah, this is real. I doubt that's the title, first of all. It sounds like a code name for me, Project Luminous, Project Maverick. I don't know, it just doesn't sound like a Star Wars-y name. And Maverick being the Tom Cruise character in Top Gun, like it feels like a fighter pilot game, and there was Starfighter art on the Project Maverick title screen or whatever.
So that title image that got shared around, that was what was found?
Yeah, it was like uploaded to the PlayStation Store, I think, in the UK or somewhere, and it wasn't long, and it got snapped up because people do that.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I think you're spot on with maybe this is like a fighter pilot video game. I'm not sure like when or where it would be set, or if it's just...
Well, it had a Star Destroyer and X-Wings in it, so I would guess we're talking Galactic Civil War, Age of Rebellion, which, you know, it's a heavily explored era, but whatever. Like, I loved the Rogue Squadron games for the N64 and the GameCube. I loved the X-Wing games, so I'm very down for just a Starfighter pilot game. I'm like one of the 2 people that when I get on Battlefront, I try to play Starfighter Assault, and I sit in the lobby for a while and give up.
I always liked that one.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I might be wrong about this, but I think the rumored people who are working on Project Maverick are the people who made the Starfighter Assault part of Battlefront 2. I might be wrong. I feel like I read that.
I haven't really read anything about it, but my first thought was maybe this is a VR game in the works, because, I mean, since the Vader Immortal stuff, we haven't really heard anything else about VR stuff for Star Wars, so maybe it's VR. But then, I mean, you talked about my idea for VR pod racing making people sick, so...
Well, I would love, like, in theory, a VR Starfighter game sounds awesome. I never played the one that they released for the first Battlefront game on PlayStation VR because we don't have one. I did just find a VR Starfighter game on Steam, I guess, and I tried it, and it was kind of rough. So, like, I'll be interested, if it's VR at all, I'll be interested to see how they manage that.
Or maybe it's like an optional VR thing.
Yeah, like, I'd love it. I would love to feel like I'm sitting in the cockpit of anything and flicking switches and stuff. But it's just weird to sit still and feel like you're upside down.
It would probably be similar to the ride at Galaxy's Edge.
I don't know. No, I'd say it's different. Like, just the amount of control you have over where your ship goes, and you're sitting still, because at least at Galaxy's Edge you are moving with it, but you're just sitting in your office chair and you feel like you're taking a dive, and it made me feel a little sick.
Well, maybe this game comes with
a barf bag.
No, gross. A chair that moves and has hydraulics and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's like a $5,000 game, everybody.
Yep. Flash Turtle wants to know why the Jedi and the High Republic artwork are using more than just blue and green lightsabers.
So yeah, in the Phil Noto concept art, most notably, it shows a bunch of different types of lightsabers, even one that looks kind of like the Darksaber. And I hadn't really given it much thought, but I think that's an interesting point. And yeah, why are they using more than just blue, green, and like the occasional purple? I think it's probably going to have some... Well, first of all, it is just concept art. It might not mean anything. It might not play into the actual final story. But I kind of like the idea that we've discussed before. Maybe the Jedi were a little more flexible back then. They didn't get so rigid until the time of the prequels. And maybe that rigidity kind of manifested itself in like their lightsaber colors in a weird way.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Or we've also talked about the concept of just the Force being more awakened at that point in time. And so, yeah, maybe kyber crystals were, I don't know, like not so, like the purple ones were not so rare. And there were a bunch of different kinds of kyber crystals.
I mean, I found it to be interesting in Fallen Order when you get not only orange, but like you can pick yellow, purple, magenta, different shades of blue and green. Like there are more colors available. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, it's a video game and they want you to be able to customize, and that's fine. But now it's like, oh, well, maybe they knew in the High Republic they were really going to blow up the color spectrum for lightsabers. And so maybe Cal like when he goes through all of his stuff with his master, that vision, and then going through Ilum, maybe that kind of opened him up to the way that the Jedi used to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Anthony Sardinas asks what my favorite 3 new canon characters are.
Because I just did my top 10 of the new canon, so I want to hear some of yours.
Top 10 would be tough, but top 3 for me, it's pretty easy. Can you all guess who might be number 1? This guy.
Baby Yoda for the podcast listeners.
Yeah. I don't know, because like my top 3 are all very close to each other, so these all could be number 1 spots, but
I think that you should do a top 4 then, because to me Baby Yoda is more of an idea right now.
He's a person. So
I think he's getting there.
He's a thing. He's a creature.
Yeah. He's a sentient being, and we're learning more about him, but also he's just an adorable thing that everyone wants to protect. Like,
yeah, okay.
I'm just saying, do an extra one. Do your top 4.
Okay. Well, Rey and Kylo.
Okay.
Are gonna be my other 2, because I fell in love with Rey in The Force Awakens, and Kylo / Ben Solo. I'm counting them both as the same person, kind of. Yeah, just the 2 main characters of the new trilogy. Trying to think more deeply for a 4th character.
I think in my video I did do an honorable mention for Baby Yoda, just because like you can't deny the cultural impact that he's had. Like, my parents know who Baby Yoda was, and I didn't have to tell them.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of non-movie characters. I guess if I were to go for a 4th, I'm gonna say Vi Marathi.
I like that choice.
Yeah, she pops up first in the Phasma novel, and then she is in the Black Spire novel, and she's also in Galaxy's Edge. And we sort of kind of met her and got to talk to her, and she's really sassy and cool. And
she was mean to me.
Well, she was nice to me. But yeah, so far, everything I've read for her stuff has been really fun and interesting.
Oh, I always like seeing a character hop between different media. Mm-hmm. I always think that's a pretty good sign of a character's staying power. Like, I put Shriv on my list because he started in games, and now he's in books and comics. And yeah, Vi starting in books and then being, I don't even know what to call, like a live action in-person story role-playing thing.
Yeah.
And she's in like holograms and stuff at Galaxy's Edge, so
I hope there's more for her in the future. I don't want her story to be over.
That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon, where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content, like audio commentaries for the films, and we're doing commentaries for the Clone Wars right now, all of the new episodes, so we're almost done with the Bad Batch arc, and we will do yesterday's episode soon.
On to YouTube questions. Kevin Riddle asks how we feel about Rey taking the Skywalker name at the end of episode 9.
I never had any issue with this. I mean, I was always a fan of Rey Nobody, but I always thought that there was a chance that could happen. That was a definite possibility, where it was like, okay, the movie's called The Rise of Skywalker, and I mean, I think even as early as The Force Awakens, people were throwing around the idea that Rey would eventually call herself Rey Skywalker.
Yeah, I like the idea. Again, when we first learned about the title Rise of Skywalker, that was a big thing that we talked about. Like, maybe Rey takes up the name Skywalker. Maybe the Jedi are now called Skywalkers.
I think that was the route that I would have preferred they go, but
technically there's already a Skywalker term out there for the
Chiss,
the Chiss children, but I don't have any issue with it. I mean, her being a Palpatine is more the issue, but her taking up the name Skywalker doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I mean, so much of Star Wars is about found family, and it's got like this kind of nice little, okay, she was a Palpatine, and now the Emperor's bloodline is going to remove his name and take on the name of his family of arch nemeses.
Sworn enemy. Yeah.
Right. So there's that. That's a nice thing. I think that there are people who just wanted her to be Rey nobody and like be confident in who she was herself. And I see that. I understand that. But it never really, I guess, surprised me or upset me when it happened in the movie. I was like, the second that old lady was like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh, well."
Yeah, if she hadn't have been a Palpatine, maybe I would have preferred her to just stay just Rey. Like, just Jack. Just Rey. But because of all the Palpatine stuff, I like the idea that she took the Skywalker name. C. Gons wants to know if Snoke was lying when he said he bridged Kylo and Rey's minds.
I don't know anymore. Like, there's so many questions about Snoke now.
I don't think so, because yes, we know that Palpatine was ultimately pulling all those strings and made Snoke/Snokes. But I think Snoke as a person legitimately thought he was controlling that situation.
I kind of figured that it was something that needed to be, I don't know, jump started. That he did somehow bridge their minds, and then once he did it one time, it could happen over and over and over. There's just some stuff like in the novelization where it's like that sounds like it was just a thing, a byproduct of them being a dyad.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic they had a slight connection before they ever even met. So it's like this, yeah, maybe it just needed to have someone make the actual connection so that it could be more strong. But all that stuff with like, I made Snoke, it just becomes very confusing, because in the original Force Awakens novelization, and I assume from the script for The Force Awakens, Snoke talks about how he's been around forever and he watched the rise and fall of the Empire, and it's like, well, did he?
Well, I think those are just memories that had been planted in his mind.
I guess that makes sense, that he just thinks he's an ancient being.
Yeah. But, I mean, I'd be curious to hear what someone like Rian Johnson would say about a question like this, because he worked with the story group and, you know, this was part of his movie. I wonder if this meant anything deeper for him as the director, or if it was just like a throwaway kind of like, yeah, Snoke did that.
Well, I think it was important.
Snoke opened the door for that.
It was important to show his manipulation, that he was like, I want Kylo to talk to you. I want him to see how weak I think he is. Mm-hmm. And I knew that he wouldn't be strong enough to hide things from you. And for Kylo to see that and decide, I'm going to cut this mofo in half. Like, that's what I think that scene was all about. So yeah, I think you're probably right that at least in Snoke's mind, he's like, I did this.
Drace90 asks if the High Republic era could eventually seamlessly merge with the prequel trilogy era.
I think that just depends on how well Phase 1 goes and Phase 2 and so on. Like, if people are really into this era, I do think that would be interesting to follow a long story of just the Jedi Order as a whole. I remember when I started reading the Walking Dead comics, Robert Kirkman, who wrote that, said that he wanted to just follow this journey of Rick Grimes, so that if you were to read like issue 1 and issue 150 or whatever, wherever it ends, you wouldn't recognize those two people. They would feel like completely different characters, but over that course of slow change, it all feels natural. So I think that would be kind of interesting to do for the Jedi.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see them maybe dabbling just like a little bit into the prequel era stuff. Like maybe they get to phase 3 of the High Republic or whatever it's going to be, and they do a time jump and they just mention something about the Jedi Council from episode 1. I feel like that makes more sense than slowly merging into stuff that we've already heard.
So I think that I should say that right now, I don't think that's their plan. I think we're probably going to get a story that's very much focused around what we've already heard about, and it'll keep those same characters. And it might cover the course of 30 years or so, but I think that they're going to try to stick it closer to that 200 BBY. And I'm just talking like maybe if Star Wars is just going to continue until we're all dead and gone eventually, then it might merge. But I do think it's an interesting idea.
It reminds me of the Patton Oswalt joke about George Lucas saying things like, oh, you like Boba Fett? Well, here's him as a little kid. Oh, you like Mace Windu? Well, here's him as a little kid. What?
Well, yeah, I
wouldn't...
we don't need to see Qui-Gon Jinn as a Padawan, like that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Michael Dean Marbach wants to know what we think about the theory that the Bad Batch becomes Scar Squad.
So Scar Squad is a special stormtrooper squad from the comics, and I think they're like Scar Squad is their nickname, but I'm pretty sure it's called like Stormtrooper Squad 99 or something like that. So one of them is big and strong, and one of them is a sniper, and one of them is like technical. And they said in the comic writer said in an interview that this was all very intentional. It's calling back to the Bad Batch. I don't think they're the same people. I think it's a new squad inspired by the Bad Batch and nothing more. And I say that because Scar Squad kind of isn't great at what they do.
Well, what era is
the Age of Rebellion? So they fight like Luke and company.
Maybe they're just not good because they're all super old now.
I mean, that would make sense, but it just... Rex seems to be still pretty great at what he does, and he would be the same age. They just are, every time they show up, like the first time they show up, you're like, oh, these guys are awesome and badass. And then the second time they show up, they get their butts kicked. And the third time they show up, they get their butts kicked. And it's like they never really evolve as a threat, and then they just kind of fade away.
Yeah, then in that case, I like the idea that they're inspired by the Bad Batch. They heard tales and they were like, let's copy that.
Yeah, and then it's the Empire and they just can't live up to clones because clones are way better.
Yep. Sebastian Carrasco asks if having canon video games is necessary or should they be more flexible? So is this kind of like the idea of bringing LucasArts back and having not strictly canon games to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big thing here that I'm thinking about is games with divergent storylines, different endings, and that kind of thing. As much as I love Fallen Order, I think that, and a lot of what I'm about to say comes from an interview with Aaron Contreras, the narrative lead on Fallen Order, and things that he said. And they said they were being very intentional about telling the story of Cal Kestis, and that there were no divergent story paths. I think that video games are the place to be more flexible and fun and let the player step into the role and try new things. Like in KOTOR, you can be good, you can be bad. Dark Forces 2, same thing. And I don't know that I see Lucasfilm doing that right now. I think they're very protective of what is and is not canon. But even those old games had a canon ending. They just specified, hey, the light side one is the real one, but you can do the dark side one for fun if you want.
I could definitely see, like, once we get a couple of good canon Star Wars games, and then, like, a few years down the road, maybe they say, okay, well, kind of like what Marvel is doing with the What If stuff. I could see them calling it something. They could call it Legends, they could call it something else, but having a video game that isn't necessarily part of the new canon, I think it would be really cool, but I wouldn't see something like that happening for a while. I think we're going to get a bunch of new content before they start to open up those doors.
Well, there have been like rumors of a KOTOR remake or reboot, reimagining something, and I think that to do that, it would be important to let the player choose. And I think as long as there was a disclaimer that said, here's what really happened, it's fine. Like, I think that a place Lucasfilm could loosen up a little bit is in the video game department, because that's supposed to be where we have control, where the player gets to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
But I understand their like need to want to keep everything in line. So
yeah, I remember when we were first learning about Fallen Order, my first thought was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you could choose to be Cal Kestis or a female character,
right,
or alien species non-binary character. It'd be cool if at the very beginning you could choose who you were, and just have a little bit more flexibility with that. Maybe down the line that could be where we're headed.
That's I hope that they do, even if it isn't KOTOR, like an inspired game where it is an RPG and you really get to live out your own like little fantasy of being whatever Jedi or character you want to be. Or like even if they made some Old Republic like that style game but canon, where you can be a bunch of different kinds of characters.
Yeah. My one concern is I don't want to go back to the like Star Killer level of power and for characters, because that part is a little, I mean, even if it's not considered canon, it would just, I don't know, it would make the other characters seem lesser.
Well, that I think is more important for Lucasfilm to protect than like, oh, well, you can choose different endings and what this character looks like. I think preserving the spirit of what the Force is and how it works, which I think they nailed in Fallen Order, I think that's more important than making sure everything, every little detail fits with the actual canon. Like, just make sure that you have a basic, like, here's the broad strokes, what is and is not canon from this game, and that would work.
Maybe we'll get a Star Wars version of The Sims.
Oh, that'd be kind of fun.
You can build your spaceship, and you can put a swimming pool in it and have your person go swimming and then take the ladder out.
That's the downfall of the Jedi.
And
they got trapped in a swimming pool without a ladder. That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.